Hello, welcome back. Today we are still working on Unit 2, Equations and Expressions. You'll notice that today's lesson is just a little bit different than normal. By now you should be used to setting up your notebook, so it should be no problem to translate it over. Our objective, writing and solving equation word problems. And our essential question, how do I write and solve equation word problems? Okay, if you need to pause this video, go ahead and pause, and then we'll begin. So you should be on page 41. Writing and solving equation word problems would also be the topic to fill in for your notebook. Okay, our first problem says Ben and Jerry together own 24 comic books. If Ben owns 6 comic books, how many does Jerry own? So very much when we were writing expressions, we need to pick out keywords. So we've already gone over them. And we need to pick out unknown variables. So what's unknown right now is how many does Jerry own? Okay, when we figure out our unknown, we need to write a let statement to represent that. So I'm going to say let, and I'm going to do J. For Jerry is going to equal the number of books Jerry owns. Okay? Okay, we know that Ben and Jerry together own 24. So our total would be 24 books. So if I'm setting up an equation, I know that 24 is going to be the total. I know Ben owns 6. Okay, so that means that I'm going to have 6 plus the number Jerry has, and we're going to use that as a J. Now, yes, this problem may seem simple, but we need to know how to set up the simple problems to figure out the more challenging ones. So we're going to start with these simple ones. So now I can go ahead and solve this problem by subtracting 6 on both sides. So 24 minus 6 is 18. Okay, so when we are solving a word problem, we also have to actually answer this question. So this means Jerry owns 18 comic books. Okay, we need to make sure that we are labeling it. Okay, so there's our first problem. So let's look at our next problem. This one says, on the first down, a football team lost 8 yards. After 2 downs, they had an overall gain of 20 yards. How many yards were gained on the second down? All right, well, I need to start picking out some key information, and I'm going to start with what is it I need to find? Well, it's almost usually in the last sentence. So how many yards were gained on the second down? So that's my question. So I need to write a let statement for that. So let, I'm going to say Y for yards equal second down. Okay, this doesn't have to be a perfect sentence, but it should be able to be understood based off of the question that's being asked. Okay, so it says on the first down, a football team lost 8 yards. Okay, loss should tell you that that's a negative. So we have -8. After 2 downs, they had an overall gain of 20 yards. So overall gain means my total. So the way I would set this up is it would be plus Y, which represents the second down, equals 20 yards. So all together I have 20 yards. So now I can solve this problem. So I would add 8 to both sides. So Y would be 28. And we have to answer the question. So this would be 28 yards. Okay, you need to make sure you have your units. All right, let's look at another more challenging one. The sum of 3 consecutive numbers is 20. What is the smallest of these numbers? This is hard. You have to understand what a consecutive number means. Okay, that means one right after another. So 1, 2, 3 would be consecutive. 4, 5, 6 would be consecutive. 100, 101, 102 would be consecutive. So they're numbers that follow each other. Okay, so I have a keyword in here that says sum. And I want to know what the smallest is. Okay, so the biggest thing is, how do we set that up? So you have to picture consecutive numbers. So let's say consecutive numbers are 10, 11, 12. Now we could guess and check and add these 3 together. So 10 plus 11 plus 12, we'd get 33. Does that get me close to 60? Well, no. So an easier way to do that is we assign a variable. So we know the smallest number would be the first one. So in this case, it would be the 10. But if I don't know what that actual number is, I'm going to assign a variable. So I'm going to say n. So our let statement becomes let n equal the first number. Well, now we have to ask ourselves, what do I have to do to 10 to get to 11? Well, it's add 1. So that means the second number would be let n plus 1 equal the second number. Okay, well now I have to ask myself, what do I need to do to get from 10 to 12? Well, I have to add 2. So we would say let n plus 2 equal the third number. You could also say smallest, middle, largest. I just like to do first, second, and third. And we know the first number would be the smallest in this case. So now we have to go back. What does sum mean? Sum means I need to add. So I need to add all 3 of these numbers up. So in order to set that up, I'm going to say n for the first one, plus the second one, which is n plus 1, plus the third one, which is n plus 2. Okay, so that's these numbers over here. So there's the first one, second, and then there's the third. And they would equal 60. Okay, so just understanding what that means, that's how we get there. So now I can solve this. Well, I need to put together my like terms. So I've got like term n, another n, another n, and I've got like term 1 and 2. So if I'm going to put them together, I'm going to end up with 1, 2, 3 n's plus 3. Gives me 60. So now I can go ahead and solve this. So I would subtract 3 on both sides. So 3n equals 57. And then I'm going to divide by 3. So n is 19. So I'm going to get 19. 19 plus 1 is 20, and 19 plus 2, or 19, 20, 21. And we can check that by adding 19 plus 20 plus 21 is 60. So I know I solved the problem correctly. But we need to answer it, the smallest number. So the smallest number is 19. So that's our answer. Okay, if it asked what the largest one is, it would be 21. All right, let's look at another example. This one says Aaliyah spent $34 on a magazine and 6 erasers. If the magazine cost $4, then how much was each eraser? So again, we need to figure out what is it asking. The cost of each eraser. So we need to create a let statement for that. Let's say E equal the cost for an eraser. So now let's set it up. Well, she spent a total of $34 on a magazine and 6 erasers. We know how much the magazine costs at $4, but we don't know how many erasers. Well, to set this one up, we know the total is 34. I need to figure out the other stuff. Well, the magazine was $4, so I know I've got $4. Plus, because I'm looking for total, and I have 6 erasers, but we don't know how much that costs. So the way we set that up is multiplication. We do 6 times the cost of the eraser to get the total there. So now I can go ahead and solve this. So I'm going to subtract 4. So I know that 6 erasers cost $30. I'm going to divide by 6. So this 5 means that's the cost of the eraser. So each eraser costs $5. All right, let's look at another example. This question says 189 students went on a field trip. 4 buses were filled and 29 students traveled in cars. How many students were in each bus? So again, we need to figure out what it's actually asking us. So it says how many students were in each bus. So I need to create my let statement. I have to define the variable. So I'm going to say let. This is talking about buses, so I'm going to say B equal number of students on the bus. Okay, so I know the total. It's telling me right here there are a total of 189 students. So if I want to start setting this up, I know that 189 is going to be my total. That's how many went. I see 4 buses. So that means I'm going to have 4B. So there are 4 buses. We just don't know how many students were on each bus. And I see 29 students traveled in cars. So plus 29. So now that I've got this set up, I can solve it. So I'm going to subtract 29 on both sides. 189 minus 29 is 160. And then I need to divide by 4. So 160 divided by 4 would be 40. We can check this by doing 40 times 4, which is 160, plus 29 is 189. So we know we solved it correctly. So we have to actually answer the question. 40 students were on each bus. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to figure out how to set up these problems. Let's look at another example. Carol spends 17 hours in a 2-week period practicing her culinary skills. How many hours does she practice in 5 weeks? Well, this one's a little bit more challenging. We have to, again, how many hours does she practice in 5 weeks? So this is kind of set up a little bit differently. If she spends 17 hours in 2 weeks, this is like a ratio. So what we have to do is still say, let H equal 5 weeks. Okay, so how many hours in 5 weeks? But if I'm thinking of this as a ratio, I'm thinking of it like 17 is to 2 as a question mark is to 5. And that question mark would be our H, because that's where our unknown is. So the best way to set up a ratio is in fractions. So we would say 17 over 2 equals H over 5. In order to set this up, the weeks have to be on the same and the hours have to be on the same. And then we cross multiply. So I have 2 times H, which is 2H. And then I have 17 times 5. Might have to use the calculator for that if we're not sure. That's not a typical math fact. And you would get 85. Now I can divide by 2. So we would divide 85 by 2. And it would be 42.5. So she would spend 42 hours and 30 minutes. 0.5 is a half an hour. So that means that would be 30 minutes. So how many hours does she spend in 5 weeks? It would be 42 hours and 30 minutes. And that would be the answer to this problem. Okay, that one was a little challenging. A few more. At this time, I would like for you to pause the video and see if you can set this one up on your own. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video and tried to work this problem out. It says the cost of hiring the band Bling for a dance is $400 plus $150 for each person who attended. If 264 people attend the dance, how much does it cost to hire the band? So this, if we were to set this up, we're looking at an equation like 400 plus $1.50 a person equals the total cost. So what we're trying to find here is the total cost. So hopefully you created a let statement where we let C, you could have used any variable you wanted, equal the cost. Okay? We actually know how many people were here, 246. So we would have 400 plus 150 times 264 would be the total cost. So this one was actually kind of nice and easy where you're just plugging these numbers in and finding it. We have all these keywords, plus, each, okay? Remember, each means to multiply, so that's there. So from there, you can just type that in your calculator. So 400 plus $1.50 times 264 should give you $796. So the total cost be $796 to hire this band. Okay, so hopefully you did well with that one. All right, here's a different one. Let's work this one out together. The perimeter of a rectangle is 400 meters. The length is 15 meters less than 4 times the width. Find the length and the width. Well, anytime it gives you a picture, in this case, a rectangle, draw the rectangle. Okay, if you don't remember what perimeter is, it means we're adding up all the sides. So if I'm talking about the perimeter, that means the whole perimeter is 400. That means that if I add up all the sides. The length is 15 meters less than the width. Well, all right, so next means I need to assign one side to be the length and the other side to be the width. I'm going to use L and W to represent that. Okay, I'm going back here. It says the length is, remember, anytime we have is, we need an equal sign, 15 meters less than 4 times the width. Okay, we've got keywords less than and 4 times the width. So if I were to write that, I would have 4W, because I got to multiply first, and then less than means that minus 15 comes after. Okay, so now all this means is that I have to add up the sides. So you'll see I wrote all those sides in, so that way we can add them up. So that means I'm going to have 4W minus 15 plus W plus 4W minus 15 plus W. And all of that equals 400. Okay, now we solve it just like we normally would. We have to combine all our like terms. So I have like terms 4W, W, 4W, W. And I also have like terms minus 15 and minus 15. So if I put all that together, 4W plus 1W is 5W, plus 4W is 9W, plus 1W is 10W. So I would get 10W, and then minus 15 and minus 15 would be a minus 30. So now I can solve this problem. So I'm going to add 30 to both sides. So I get 10W equals 430, and then I divide by 10. Okay, so that means the width would be 43. Now we got to go back and actually answer the question. It says find the length and the width. So that means my length, so if my width is 43, my length is going to be 4 times 43 minus 15. We might have to type that in our calculator. And once you do, you should get 157. And then these are meters, so we need to make sure we have our units. Okay, this next one says Star makes skirts as a hobby. It cost her $34 to make one skirt. Her fixed costs are $275. If she can sell her skirts for $45, how many must she sell to break even? Okay, here's some vocabulary. Her fixed costs, that means how much she has to pay in order to even make her skirts. Okay, so we need to figure out what's it asking us. So how many must she sell to break even? How many what? Well, skirts. So we're going to say let S equal number of skirts. It costs her $34 to make one skirt. Her fixed costs are $275. So think of fixed costs as like her having to buy the sewing machine, thread, anything like that. And we want to know how much she's going to break even. So that means we want to know when her total is going to be 0. All right, so to set this up, we have $275. She's paying that, so that's a negative. So we would say negative $275. It costs her, so we've got another cost here, $34 to make one skirt. So this is, again, another negative thing. So $34, we're talking about skirts. And then she's going to sell them for $45. So that's a positive. So we would do plus 45S. And then to break even, we want that to be 0, meaning that she's eventually, if she sells one more, she'll start making a cost. So we have to combine like terms. Okay, here are my like terms. So I have negative 275. I've got 34S, negative 34S plus 45S. So we got to add those together. And we're going to get 11S, so it's positive. And we want it to be 0. Okay, so now I can solve this problem. So I'm going to add 275 to both sides. I have 11S equals 275, and then I'm going to divide by 11. Actually, so 275 divided by 11, you might have to type that in your calculator, but you're going to get 25. So S equals 25. So that means she has to make 25 skirts in order to break even. All right, we are going to stop there. You can move on to your assignment for today. We'll probably go over a few more again tomorrow.